Maya Chen sat in the back corner of the classroom, her thick glasses reflecting the blue glow of her tablet screen. She kept her head down, shoulders hunched forward, making herself as small as possible. When Professor Valdris called on students to answer questions about xenobiology, Maya would freeze like a deer in headlights, mumbling barely audible responses that were somehow always correct. The other students at the Galactic Academy barely noticed her. To them, she was just another quiet human girl who seemed terrified of her own shadow. The Zephyrian students with their crystalline skin would tower over her in the hallways, and she would press herself against the walls to let them pass. The scaled Drachmori would hiss casual greetings, and Maya would flinch as if they had threatened her life. "Pathetic," Kextar muttered to his friends during lunch break. The massive Drachmori warrior caste student flexed his clawed hands. How did such a weak creature even get accepted to the academy? Humans are supposed to be the galaxy's newest warriors, but this one looks like she would cry if someone spoke too loudly. His friends laughed, their scales rattling with amusement. Maya sat 3 tables away, picking at her nutrition cube while reading something on her tablet. She seemed completely absorbed in whatever was on her screen, occasionally pushing her glasses up her nose with a trembling finger. What none of them knew was that Maya's tablet wasn't displaying homework assignments or research papers. The screen showed classified military reports, intelligence briefings, and tactical assessments that would make seasoned generals lose sleep. Maya Chen wasn't just another student. She was Lieutenant Maya Chen of the Human Defense Corps, the youngest person ever to receive the designation Apex Predator in galactic military records. 3 months ago, Maya had single-handedly eliminated an entire Void Reaper strike team that had infiltrated the human colony on Kepler 442b. The Void Reapers were the galaxy's most feared assassins, cybernetically enhanced killers who had never failed a mission in over 2 centuries. Maya had tracked them through the colony's ventilation systems, using nothing but a combat knife and her bare hands. Security footage showed 17 dead Reapers scattered throughout the colony, each eliminated with surgical precision. Maya had saved 8,000 colonists without a single civilian casualty. The mission reports used words like inhuman efficiency and terrifying precision to describe her work. One witness, a hardened Marine veteran, had written in his statement, "I've seen wars across 12 systems. But I've never seen anything like what that girl did. She moved through those tunnels like death itself, silent and unstoppable. The Reapers never even knew what hit them." But here at the Academy, surrounded by alien students who saw humans as either curiosities or weaklings, Maya played a different role. Her commanding officers had been very clear about her mission: gather intelligence on potential threats to humanity while maintaining the lowest possible profile. The galaxy's major powers were still deciding what to do about humanity's rapid expansion into space, and tensions were rising. Maya adjusted her glasses and continued reading a report about Zephyrian military capabilities. The crystalline beings were incredibly strong and could manipulate electromagnetic fields, but they had a critical weakness in their cellular structure that most humans didn't know about. Maya filed the information away in her perfect memory, just another piece of data that might save human lives someday. "Hey, human girl!" Kextar's voice boomed across the cafeteria. Maya's head snapped up, her eyes wide with apparent fear. The Drachmori was standing now, his 7-foot frame casting a shadow over nearby students. "I'm talking to you, little mouse." Maya's hands trembled as she slowly stood up, clutching her tablet against her chest. Her breathing became quick and shallow, exactly the response everyone expected from a frightened human girl. But beneath her thick glasses, Maya's eyes were calculating distances, analyzing Kextar's stance, and identifying at least 12 different ways to kill him before he could blink. Yes?" Maya's voice was barely a whisper, perfectly conveying helpless terror. Kextar laughed and began walking toward her, his heavy footsteps echoing through the suddenly quiet cafeteria. Other students turned to watch, some with curiosity, others with the cruel anticipation of seeing a weakling get humiliated. "I've been wondering," Kextar said as he approached, his fanged smile spreading wider with each step. "How exactly did your species conquer half the galaxy when you can't even speak without stuttering?" Maya took a step backward, bumping into her table. Her tablet slipped from her trembling hands and clattered to the floor. The screen briefly displayed what looked like military schematics before going dark. I don't know what you mean," she whispered. "Humans," Kextar spat, now standing directly in front of Maya. "Everyone talks about how dangerous you are, but look at you. You're nothing but a scared little animal." He reached out with one clawed hand toward her face. Maya flinched away from his touch, pressing herself against the table. Her entire body language screamed victim, helpless, and terrified. But something flickered in her eyes for just an instant, something cold and calculating that Kextar was too arrogant to notice. The moment his claw touched her cheek, Maya made a sound that was half sob, half whimper. "Please don't hurt me," she begged, tears forming behind her thick lenses. Kextar's friends cheered him on from across the room. Even some of the other species students were laughing now, enjoying the spectacle of the weak human being tormented. The Academy's instructors, mostly Galactic Council representatives, watched with barely concealed amusement. This was exactly what they wanted to see, proof that humans were just another primitive species that could be easily controlled. "This is what we're supposed to fear?" Kextar announced loudly, his claw still pressed against Maya's trembling cheek. "The mighty human warriors? This pathetic creature couldn't hurt a pollination drone, let alone win a war." Maya's response was another sob. More tears, and a whispered plea for mercy that made several students laugh out loud. She had perfected this performance over months of practice, becoming exactly what everyone expected to see. A harmless, frightened human girl who posed no threat to anyone. But as Kextar continued his humiliation, enjoying the attention from his audience, he failed to notice that Maya's free hand had moved to her belt. Her fingers found a small device that looked like an ordinary data pad, but was actually something far more dangerous. With movements too subtle for anyone to see, Maya activated a signal that would reach human intelligence networks across 3 systems. The message was simple. Package delivered. Beginning Phase 2 of intelligence gathering. Recommend increased monitoring of Drakmori military assets. Maya had been gathering intelligence for 3 months, mapping the Academy's security systems, documenting the strengths and weaknesses of various alien species, and identifying key targets for potential future operations. Her tearful, terrified act had given her access to areas and information that a confident human operative could never have obtained. As Kextar finally released her and walked away, basking in the applause of his friends, Maya collapsed into her chair as if her legs could no longer support her. She picked up her tablet with shaking hands, her glasses sliding down her nose as she pretended to be overcome with emotion. But behind those thick lenses, Maya's eyes were already analyzing her next targets. The Zephyrian students who had laughed at her humiliation, the Academy instructors who had allowed it to happen, the security systems that she had been mapping for weeks. Each piece of information was another weapon in humanity's growing arsenal. That night, Maya sat alone in her small dormitory room, still playing the role of the traumatized student. Her neighbors could probably hear her crying through the thin walls, just another human girl overwhelmed by the cruelties of the wider galaxy. But the tears were fake, carefully timed for maximum effect. In reality, Maya was composing detailed reports on everything she had observed, each document encrypted with codes that would take alien computers centuries to break. She described the casual cruelty of the other species, their assumptions about human weakness, and most importantly, their complete lack of preparation for what humanity was really capable of. The galaxy saw humans as either curiosities or potential threats, but they had no idea that their worst nightmare was sitting in their most prestigious academy, disguised as a frightened girl who jumped at shadows. Maya Chen was gathering the intelligence that would help humanity survive in a hostile galaxy, one terrified whimper at a time. 2 weeks after the cafeteria incident, Maya had become something of a celebrity at the academy, though not the kind she would have chosen. Students from various species would go out of their way to frighten her, treating her fear responses like entertainment. They would sneak up behind her in hallways, speak loudly near her during study sessions, or simply stare at her until she began to shake. Maya played her part perfectly, developing what appeared to be severe anxiety that kept getting worse. She began carrying a small medical inhaler, claiming to have developed breathing problems from the stress. She started wearing even thicker glasses, claiming her vision was deteriorating from lack of sleep. Most convincingly of all, she began visiting the Academy's counseling center twice a week, where she would sob uncontrollably about being surrounded by terrifying aliens who made her feel unsafe. What the counselors didn't know was that these sessions gave Maya access to restricted areas of the Academy's administrative network. While pretending to fill out psychological evaluation forms, she was actually copying classified files about military cooperation between the various alien species. Her anxiety attacks provided perfect cover for installing surveillance devices throughout the counseling center, which happened to be located next to the Academy's main communication hub. The intelligence Maya was gathering painted a disturbing picture of the galaxy's intentions toward humanity. The major alien powers were planning something called the Containment Protocol, a coordinated effort to limit human expansion before it became a threat to the established order. The Drakmori wanted to challenge humanity to ritual combat, believing their warrior culture would easily dominate what they saw as a weak species. The Zephyrians preferred economic warfare, planning to use their control of rare minerals to strangle human colonies. The Insectoid Hive Collective was the most direct, advocating for preemptive strikes against human military installations. Maya's handlers in human intelligence were both pleased with her intelligence gathering and concerned about her psychological state. Her regular reports had begun to include details about the mental toll of maintaining her cover identity. She wrote about the difficulty of appearing weak when every instinct screamed at her to fight back, about the rage that built up every time someone mocked her fear, about the way her actual sleep patterns were being disrupted by maintaining constant vigilance while pretending to be helpless. But Maya was far from breaking. If anything, the constant humiliation was fueling a cold anger that made her more dangerous with each passing day. Every laugh at her expense was another entry in a mental ledger that she planned to balance eventually. Every casual cruelty from her fellow students was being cataloged and remembered with perfect clarity. The breaking point came during a joint military exercise class, where students from different species were supposed to work together on tactical problems. Professor Valdris, a massive Zephyrian with skin like polished silver, had assigned Maya to a team with Kextar and 3 of his Drakmori friends. The exercise involved planning an assault on a fortified position, and Maya's teammates made it clear that they expected nothing useful from the frightened human. "Just stay out of our way, little mouse," Kextar growled as they huddled over tactical displays. "Real warriors are talking." Maya nodded tearfully and retreated to a corner of the simulation chamber, clutching her tablet as if it were a security blanket. Her teammates ignored her completely, developing an attack plan that relied entirely on Drakmori's strength and aggression. They planned to charge the fortified position head-on, using their natural armor and claws to overwhelm the defenders through sheer force. While they worked, Maya studied the tactical display with the trained eye of someone who had actually planned and executed military operations. The scenario was based on a real battle from the Frontier Wars, where human forces had successfully defended against a Void Reaper assault. Maya had studied this battle extensively during her military training, and she knew exactly how the defenders had turned what looked like an impregnable position into a killing field. The Drakmori plan was suicide. The fortification had overlapping fields of fire that would cut down any frontal assault, and the defenders had heavy weapons positioned to exploit the exact approach Kextar's team was planning. But Maya said nothing, continuing to play the role of the useless teammate who was too frightened to contribute. When Professor Valdris called for the teams to present their plans, Kextar strutted to the front of the chamber with obvious confidence. "Honored Professor," he began, puffing out his chest, "my team will demonstrate the superior tactics of the Drakmori warrior caste." He gestured dismissively toward Maya. The human was too frightened to participate, as expected. The Drakmori plan unfolded exactly as Maya had predicted. The simulation showed their forces charging across open ground directly into the defenders' killing zones. Virtual Drakmori warriors fell by the dozens, cut down by concentrated fire from positions they hadn't even identified. Within minutes, the entire assault force was eliminated without inflicting a single casualty on the defenders. Professor Valdris's crystalline features showed obvious disappointment. "Kextar, this was a disaster. Did your team conduct any reconnaissance? Did you attempt to identify defensive positions? Did you consider alternative approaches?" Kextar's scales flushed deep red with embarrassment and anger. "The simulation must be flawed, Professor. No defensive position could withstand a proper Drakmori assault. This scenario is unrealistic." "On the contrary," Professor Valdris replied coldly, "this simulation is based on an actual historical battle. The defenders were human forces facing a Void Reaper assault. They achieved a complete victory with 0 casualties." A murmur went through the class. The Void Reapers were legendary for their military effectiveness, and the idea that humans had defeated them so decisively was shocking to most of the alien students. "Perhaps," Professor Valdris continued, "you should have consulted with your human teammate. She might have provided valuable insight into human defensive tactics." All eyes turned to Maya, who was sitting in the corner looking absolutely terrified at suddenly being the center of attention. Her hands shook as she clutched her tablet, and she seemed to be having difficulty breathing. I don't know anything about fighting," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was too scared to even look at the tactical display properly." Kextar's embarrassment transformed into rage. He had been humiliated in front of the entire class, and the suggestion that the worthless human girl might have been able to help was the final insult. "You're telling me that this pathetic creature could have done better? This weak, frightened animal who jumps at shadows?" "I'm just saying that diversity of perspective can be valuable in tactical planning," Professor Valdris replied calmly. "Prove it," Kextar snarled, whirling to face Maya. "If humans are such great warriors, let this one show us how it should be done. Let her plan an assault on the same fortification." Maya's eyes went wide with terror behind her thick glasses. "Oh no, I couldn't possibly. I don't know anything about military tactics. I'd probably just embarrass myself." "Exactly," Kextar said with satisfaction. "The human will fail just as miserably as she does at everything else." Professor Valdris looked thoughtful. "Actually, that's not a terrible idea. Maya, would you be willing to attempt the exercise? It would be educational for the entire class." Maya looked like she was about to cry. I really don't think I should. What if I make a mistake? What if everyone laughs at me?" "No one will laugh," Professor Valdris assured her, though several students were already smirking. "This is a learning environment." With obvious reluctance and visible terror, Maya slowly stood up and walked to the tactical display. Her hands were shaking so badly that she had trouble operating the controls. Several times she had to stop and take deep breaths from her inhaler, claiming that the stress was making it hard to breathe. But as Maya began to work with the display, something subtle began to change. Her movements, while still trembling, became more precise. Her eyes, wide with apparent fear, were actually calculating angles, distances, and timing with perfect accuracy. To the watching students, she looked like a frightened girl stumbling through an impossible task. In reality, she was recreating one of the most brilliant defensive victories in human military history. Maya's plan unfolded slowly, with constant apologies and requests for reassurance. She identified weak points in the fortification that no one else had noticed. She marked concealed approach routes that would allow attackers to bypass the main defensive positions. She calculated the precise timing needed to coordinate multiple simultaneous assaults. "I'm sorry, this probably isn't very good," Maya said, her voice still shaking with apparent fear. "I just thought maybe if you attacked from several directions at once and used these natural features for cover and timed everything so the defenders couldn't concentrate their fire." Professor Valdris was staring at the tactical display with obvious amazement. Maya's plan was brilliant, using the terrain and the defenders' own defensive positions against them. She had identified vulnerabilities that even military specialists might miss and created a coordinated assault that would overwhelm the defenders through superior strategy rather than brute force. "This is quite sophisticated," Professor Valdris said slowly. "Maya, where did you learn about these tactical concepts?" Maya blushed and stammered. I just read a lot of books, military history and stuff. I know I'm not good at this kind of thing, but I thought maybe—" When they ran the simulation with Maya's plan, the results were devastating. The attackers penetrated the fortification from multiple angles, neutralizing defensive positions with surgical precision. The entire base fell in less than 20 minutes, with minimal attacker casualties. The classroom was completely silent. Even Kextar was staring at the results with his jaw hanging open. This terrified human girl, who couldn't speak without stuttering, had just demonstrated tactical brilliance that surpassed anything they had seen from trained military officers. "Remarkable," Professor Valdris breathed. "Maya, have you considered a career in military planning?" Maya immediately began shaking her head frantically. "Oh no, I could never. I'm too scared. I hate violence. This was just luck. I probably copied something I read somewhere without realizing it." As the class ended and students filed out, many of them were whispering among themselves. The quiet human girl had just demonstrated capabilities that completely contradicted everything they thought they knew about her. But Maya's performance had been so thoroughly convincing, her fear and reluctance so obviously genuine, that most of them concluded it had indeed been just luck. Only Kextar remained suspicious. As he watched Maya pack up her belongings with trembling hands, something in his predator's instincts was telling him that there was more to this human than met the eye. But every piece of evidence contradicted that suspicion. Maya was clearly terrified, obviously weak, and had spent months proving that she was no threat to anyone. Still, as Maya hurried out of the classroom, clutching her tablet and keeping her head down, Kextar couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong with this picture. He decided to keep a closer eye on the frightened human girl, just in case. The attack came 3 days after the tactical exercise, during the Academy's night cycle when most students were supposed to be sleeping. Maya was in her dormitory room, officially suffering from another anxiety attack that had kept her awake. In reality, she was monitoring intercepted communications that had been setting off alarm bells in her enhanced senses all evening. The Void Reapers had come for her. Maya's cover had been perfect for months, but someone had finally connected the dots between the frightened Academy student and the legendary killer who had eliminated an entire Reaper strike team. The assassins had infiltrated the academy with orders to eliminate Lieutenant Maya Chen before she could gather any more intelligence on alien military capabilities. Through her surveillance network, Maya watched as 6 figures in advanced stealth armor moved through the academy's corridors with deadly precision. Each Reaper was a masterpiece of cybernetic enhancement. Their reflexes boosted beyond normal biological limits, their weapons capable of cutting through military-grade armor like paper. They moved in perfect coordination, having mapped every approach to Maya's room and eliminated every possible escape route. They had made only one mistake. They assumed Maya Chen would try to run. Maya sat on her narrow dormitory bed, apparently lost in another terrified breakdown. Her thick glasses reflected the soft light from her tablet screen as tears streamed down her cheeks. To any observer, she looked exactly like what she had always appeared to be, a weak, frightened human girl who had finally been pushed beyond her breaking point. But Maya wasn't breaking. She was transforming. The trembling in her hands wasn't fear anymore. It was anticipation. The tears on her cheeks were real. But they weren't tears of terror. They were tears of pure, focused rage that had been building for months of humiliation, months of pretending to be weak while aliens mocked everything humanity represented. When the first Reaper came through her door, moving faster than most beings could even see, Maya was ready. She had shed her thick glasses, revealing eyes that were cold and calculating rather than frightened and confused. Her civilian clothes had been replaced by the matte black tactical suit that she had hidden in her room's ventilation system months earlier. Most importantly, the terrified posture and trembling movements had been replaced by something that made hardened killers take an involuntary step backward. Maya Chen, the frightened academy student, had disappeared completely. In her place stood Lieutenant Maya Chen of the Human Defense Corps, apex predator, and the most dangerous human being in known space. The first Reaper's enhanced reflexes allowed him to begin drawing his weapon before Maya had even finished moving. It wasn't enough. Maya's combat knife found the gap between his helmet and chest armor with surgical precision, severing his spinal column before his finger could find the trigger. He dropped to the floor without making a sound. The second Reaper came through the window, plasma rifle already charging as he crashed through the reinforced glass. Maya was there waiting for him, having predicted his approach through her analysis of the Academy's architectural plans. She caught his weapon hand in a grip that crushed cybernetically enhanced bones, twisted the rifle around, and put 3 plasma bolts through his chest before his feet touched the floor. The third and fourth Reapers entered simultaneously, one through the door and one through the ceiling. This was the coordinated assault that had made them legendary, impossible to counter because no single opponent could engage multiple targets from different angles at the same time. But Maya wasn't a single opponent anymore. She was something else entirely, something that moved with inhuman grace and struck with mathematical precision. She rolled under the doorway Reaper's fire, came up inside his guard, and drove her elbow through his sternum with enough force to stop his cybernetically enhanced heart. Without breaking stride, she grabbed his falling plasma rifle and put a shot through the ceiling Reaper's head before he could target her new position. The fifth Reaper had positioned himself in the corridor, ready to cut down anyone who tried to escape the room. When Maya came through the doorway, he was already tracking her with his weapon's targeting system. He squeezed the trigger just as Maya moved, and the plasma bolt passed through the space where her head had been a microsecond earlier. Maya's return shot took him in the throat, punching through his armor's weak point with impossible accuracy. As he fell, gurgling behind his helmet, Maya was already turning to face the final threat. The sixth Reaper was the team leader, enhanced beyond even the normal Void Reaper standards. He had been watching the entire engagement through his team's tactical network, analyzing Maya's movements, calculating her capabilities. When she turned to face him, he was already moving. Faster than anything biological had a right to move. Maya met his charge head-on. They fought through the corridor like two forces of nature, neither giving ground, neither making mistakes. The Reaper's cybernetic enhancements made him faster and stronger than any normal human. Maya's training and natural abilities made her something that existed outside normal human parameters entirely. Plasma fire and knife work turned the academy hallway into a war zone. Emergency alarms began blaring as other students woke to the sounds of combat. Security forces were mobilizing, but they might as well have been moving through molasses compared to the speed of the fight between the Reaper and the girl who was supposed to be afraid of her own shadow. The end came when the Reaper made his first and final mistake. He assumed that Maya, despite her obvious skills, was still ultimately human. He committed to a killing strike that would have ended any normal opponent, cybernetically enhanced or not. Maya wasn't normal. She moved inside his guard, accepted a wound that would have crippled most beings, and put her knife through his primary power core. The Reaper's enhancements shut down all at once, leaving him suddenly mortal in the hands of someone who had never been entirely human to begin with. As Academy security forces finally arrived, they found Maya sitting in her destroyed dormitory, covered in blood and surrounded by the bodies of 6 Void Reapers. She had her thick glasses back on, and tears were streaming down her face as she rocked back and forth in apparent shock. They came out of nowhere," she sobbed to the security chief, a crystalline Zephyrian who was staring at the carnage with obvious disbelief. "I was so scared. I don't know how I survived. I think they must have killed each other by mistake in the dark. I just hid under my bed and prayed." The evidence supported her story mostly. The room was dark. The Reapers were using advanced stealth technology. Friendly fire incidents were common in close-quarters combat. Most importantly, everyone knew that Maya Chen was a terrified, helpless human girl who couldn't hurt anyone if she tried. But Kextar had arrived with the security forces, and he was staring at Maya with dawning comprehension. The way she held herself, even while crying. The way her eyes tracked movement, even while appearing to be in shock. The fact that she had somehow avoided being killed when 6 of the galaxy's most feared assassins had been slaughtered in her room. "Professor Valdris," Kextar said quietly, "I think we need to talk." But when they turned to find the professor, he was gone. A quick check revealed that Professor Valdris had never existed. The crystalline being who had been teaching at the Academy for months was actually Agent Valdris of Human Intelligence, one of Maya's handlers who had been monitoring her mission from inside the Academy's staff. As the truth began to dawn on the Academy's leadership, emergency communications were flying between alien governments across the galaxy. The terrified human girl who had been the subject of so much mockery and casual cruelty wasn't a frightened victim at all. She was a weapon, one that had been gathering intelligence on their military capabilities while they laughed at her tears. Maya continued her performance even as the Academy's administration realized they had been hosting humanity's most dangerous operative for months. She cried, she shook, she begged for protection from whoever had sent the assassins after an innocent student. Her act was so convincing that even beings who knew the truth found themselves wanting to comfort her. But in the encrypted reports that she transmitted that night, Maya's true voice came through clearly. "Mission accomplished. Full intelligence package on alien military capabilities obtained. Recommend immediate implementation of containment protocol countermeasures. Note, alien psychological assessment of human weakness confirmed accurate. They will not expect what comes next. Personal note, request immediate extraction. Maintaining cover identity becoming psychologically challenging. The rage buildup from months of simulated helplessness is affecting operational effectiveness, ready to return to open combat operations. Final assessment. The galaxy sees us as either curiosities or annoyances. They have no idea what humanity is truly capable of. When the war comes, and it will come, They will learn the difference between a frightened human girl and a human warrior. I look forward to being there when they do. As dawn broke over the academy, Maya Chen sat in a medical facility, still playing the role of the traumatized victim while medical scanners confirmed what everyone already believed. She was just a normal human girl who had survived an impossible situation through incredible luck. The galaxy would continue to underestimate humanity right up until the moment they realized their mistake. And by then, warriors like Maya Chen would be done hiding in plain sight. The galaxy had laughed at human weakness, while humanity's strongest prepared for a war that was already beginning. Maya's mission was complete. Soon her real work would begin.